Welcome back to the Gas Compression Podcast. Excited to have on Matt Beaudreau. We're continuing our discussion of the blue collar skilled trade workforce issues that we've been having. Matt, I actually saw Matt a couple of years ago. First time I ever saw Matt was at the Acton Owners Conference, where you gave a speech, and that was my first introduction to you. So Matt and I share a common interest in, how would you say it? Disrupting education. How would you say it? Disrupting education.
Yeah, I like disrupting. I like just creating a revolution of an entirely new system altogether. So I
Absolutely.
guess that's absolutely a form of disruption, I guess, isn't it?
It is, yes. So Matt and Matt founded Acton Placer back in 2016, and you've got two campuses now. You're going to open one in Sacramento this year or last year.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've got three. So
Three.
we have three, and the reality is we may need to do more here in the general area, and that's a good problem to have. So it's about finding spaces, but we got three up and running.
I'm so proud to hear that, man. That's awesome. So
It is
yeah,
so fun.
Matt, I have the Acton Academy of Amarillo. We just started ours last year. So
So awesome.
yeah. So yeah, kind of have known Matt a little bit, and Matt also has a podcast called The Essential 11.
The Essential 11. Yes, sir.
Yep. And then you co-founded the Apogee program with
That's
Tim Kennedy, right?
That is correct as well. Yeah, the Apogee Strong program is we got a global mentorship program. So we got young men from all over the world, man, multiple countries that we get to mentor week in and week out, and so that's a pretty rad deal too. So yeah, life is good. Everything is everything is geared towards helping young people, all of it.
That is awesome, which is why you are so uniquely qualified to talk about what we're doing today. So the gas compression industry, the construction industry, the fill in the blank industry of the skilled trades
Mm-hmm.
is just not being, we have a lot of really talented older people leaving these industries, and it's just not being populated.
Yep.
My general consensus is, I'm 39. So when I was in high school in 2001, I grew up in a small town with a big refinery. And so it wasn't really that, if you went to work for the refinery or in a skilled trade, it wasn't that big of a deal, but college was important.
Right.
And it seems like that's really ramped up in the last few years. And now, like some of the people on my podcast have said, as a machine shop, that's the business I'm in. You're not competing just with other machine shops. Amazon is coming to our city in Amarillo.
Right.
And if they will, they'll come in and offer, $18 an hour to sit on a forklift.
Yeah.
That's actually who you're competing against.
Yep.
And so, those are the issues. So I guess where to start off is, what insight do you have working with young men in the Apogee Strong program?
Yeah.
What do you think, man? What's going on in the skilled trade?
Yeah. So I get, one of the things that that I definitely want to mention too, because I think it helps give context to what we're talking about here, is as I've been building out these campuses, and I've come out of education, prior to, right? So I understand the game of education. I always use that word, and I use that word very, very intentionally. I understand the game from a higher, quote unquote, higher ed standpoint. Was at Stanford for a long time, worked in the admissions department there. I was in public schools as a teacher and administrator. So I get the game of administration. As I've been building out my Acton campuses, I was traveling the world and gave almost 400 keynotes over 7 years while building out these campuses. So my clients have been everybody from, your Amazons, your Netflix, Googles, Microsofts. I've worked with all of them, and Purina or what, but I've also worked with Caterpillar and Beaver Excavating and a lot of electrical companies and SMUD, and so I've worked with a lot of these trade industries as well. And I remember speaking at ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, and Mike Rowe, if you're familiar with Mike Rowe.
Yes,
Job, right?
I'd love to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, good luck, man. So would I. Let me tell you, dude, like the hardest guy to get ever, because I've tried for a year. But he's a great guy, and I love his message. But he was speaking at that same conference, and we got into this conversation about how hard it is to get good young people, right? So I just give that context so that people understand I've been working in the trades industry trying to help organizations recruit as well. So that said, it is a multifaceted issue, but I think the two biggest things you touched on, one, the two biggest issues that are making it the most glaring problem is that whole everybody's got to go to college concept, right? I'm a few years older than you, but it was very much alive and well. That same thing in high school. Look, you got to go to college. The baby boomer generation was that first generation to really go, oh my gosh, college is actually going to help us in our careers. If we'll go back and maybe do that, or if we'll finish it now before we go into the workforce, if we'll go, like, college was important for them for a very short period of time. What happened is they turned around and raised us and had that same message that they perpetuated. But the problem is that's no longer true. It's no longer true in society. But you've got the biggest generation in our country, the boomers, followed by the next biggest generation, which is the millennials, which, believe it or not, you and I are in that millennial category, right? That higher end of the millennial category, that are believing college is the answer. So we're perpetuating that from an academic standpoint. So schools still perpetuate that, everything, right? So that's a big part of it. And what's happened is, not only is that an issue coming at our young people from an educational point of view, but it is coming through, again, the cognitive dissonance that's created for our parents too. So the parent message, the educational message, everybody's got to go to college. Then you've got these, cultural influences, your social media, that is, kind of giving you this idea of what a quote unquote sexy job would look like. You hear about Amazon all the time, so it sounds great to go work for Amazon. Why wouldn't I want to go work for Amazon, right? So you have all of these competing messages for young people. The message that doesn't get perpetuated, hey man, trades, there's so many options. There are so many jobs available. These are really, really freaking great jobs with a long tail on those. You can build an amazing, like, we're not perpetuating that message from a parental or an educational standpoint. Huge problem.
So in your experience working, you work with, is it 13 to 16-year-olds?
For the Apogee program.
Apogee Strong.
So Apogee Strong, yeah, we've got our youngest guy, I think right now is 12, and we actually have some guys up into their early 20s. So I think 21, 22 is our oldest right now. So yeah, we've got a decent little range.
Right. So what, I'm just curious, in the, in that general population, in that age range, what are the thoughts and discussions you're having about careers? Like, hey, a 13, 14, 15-year-old,
yeah,
that's different than a 20-year-old. So what are these young men, are you having those discussions?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. So I'm of the belief that all education is self-education, right? There is no such thing as any education that is not about the self, finding out who you are, finding out what you're capable of, what you love to do, what you're uniquely qualified to do, what you would like to learn more of, what you would never want to learn more of again. All of those things are wildly valuable, but it all goes back to figuring out who I am so that I can have my, pulse on what my value prop is to the world, right? How am I going to go change the world? So we absolutely have those conversations. These guys are taking on projects and challenges that are really a bevy of experiences, much like what we do at our Acton campuses, right? It's a bunch of experiences so that they can start to figure those things out. They're hard experiences so that they come out the other side and actually have some self-confidence, not some BS bravado. They have self-confidence because they've done something. And it's a bunch of experiences where they can learn so much about themselves. I always talk about, you can't know what your favorite food is if you only eat 5 foods. Right. You only eat 5 foods ever. You're going to pick out of those 5, right? But if you go to this buffet that's got pretty much everything you can imagine and you try all of it, you're going to start to get a really good idea. Well, this is the food I really like. And then you can start to tweak it and put your own spin on it, right? So we want that same thing for them. So we're having all these experiences so they can start to figure these things out, including building, running, learning about circuitry, learning about, anything you can think of that would kind of foray into that trade space too. And then we're bringing on mentors every single week that are all coming from all kinds of backgrounds. And one of the things that I love about it is we'll ask the question, and I asked this question on the Essential 11 too, and I've had some of the best, entrepreneurs on the planet. I always ask, what do you want to see from a young person that wants to come work for you? Not once has anybody said, I want to see the college degree.
That's right.
Not once. And I've done 130 episodes, and I'm talking the best entrepreneurs on the planet, right? Not once. So we talk about their future from the standpoint of like, look, if you want to go to college, great. And you can articulate why that's necessary. Great. Let's talk about that game and how to play that game. But if you don't, look at all these other options, look at trades, look at praxis, look at all, so we talk about all that incessantly, because I have no pony in the, in the race, man. All I want is for them to be able to open any doors they want to open.
Okay. So for that same age group,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the public education system is sort of getting the message. There's dollars and resources being diverted towards, these kind of, they call it Amtech in Amarillo. It's where they might have some program.
Mm-hmm.
There's still an issue, because they're, what the school system sees as, oh, well, we'll raise these young men up to be we'll get them to be welders or something.
Yeah.
Or machinists or mechanics. And then they come to the actual marketplace, like to my machine shop, and they say, hey, I got a machine shop certificate from, my high school, and I'd like $30 an hour, please. And we're
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, well, hang on just a second, because you didn't actually learn what you needed to learn, because there's,
Right.
the time that you can do things in, that determines how much you can get paid and all those. How do guys like me or these other industries work with the local high schools? Because I think there's money and resources being diverted that way. So I know
Yeah.
they're hearing the call, but there's still quite a bit of an issue with the administration side of things. So
Yeah.
do you deal with that? Do you have any insight into how to deal with that?
Yeah, that's a tough deal, because you're talking about a number of different things, right? We're talking about, the fact that traditional conventional school will always deal in an academic realm, in a theoretical realm, right? And that perpetuates all the way up into higher ed. I had a pretty public, back and forth with this Yale MBA professor who was telling me that all of my businesses, it doesn't matter that they're 7-figure businesses, that makes no difference to him, that they were not sustainable. He was telling me that my parenting methods weren't sustainable. Even though I've got the healthiest, happiest kids, on the planet, that are the most loving, giving, capable, mature, money making, they're just like, they're checking off all of these boxes, that you would want to see your kid do, check off. And he's telling me all this as the Yale MBA professor. Problem is, he's never actually owned and operated a business, and he has no kids. Right. And that summarizes a lot of what we're dealing with from an academic standpoint too. Right. So even in the schools, I'm thankful for the schools that are at least allowed, because a lot of their funding, government funding, doesn't come from those kind of programs. So I'm very thankful when they include those kinds of programs. But we're dealing with that. We're dealing with a work ethic issue, which is, again, kind of this trickle down cultural and parental issues that we are seeing. So that's part of what we are dealing with there too. And we're wanting the reality, the real learning kind of experience. So the trick is kind of what you're talking to, figuring out how to work with the school districts so that these young people, maybe they're spending X amount of time on campus, getting these certificates, but X amount of time needs to also be spent in an apprenticeship kind of deal, working actually in the machine shop with you, real business that needs real results, and getting that experience. It's figuring out a way to develop that relationship where you guys get in there and you become a part of that school. And I think the bigger opportunity might not necessarily be with schools that already have what they think is working for them, but it's going to the schools that don't offer that,
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out how to partner there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The schools that don't offer it, how do I partner here and just go, hey, is there a way to get credit for these guys to come be, an apprentice over here? Because then the school is able to look better going, hey, look, we've got these relationships. They don't have to try to do something from an academic standpoint. And then these young people, you're creating a pipeline for yourself where they're coming in and you can actually instill the skill set, the mindset, all of that, that's actually going to matter in the long run. That's the only strategy that I can see making any kind of sense in that regard.
Just real quick, where can we find that very public back and forth with that Yale MBA professor?
So, okay. Yeah.
Where can is that online somewhere we can watch it?
I will find out. So I've got a friend of mine who is, he's a phenomenal speaker and consultant. It was a guy that I've worked with and spoken with for years. his best friend is the CEO of Coors, the beer company. So we did it was a recorded thing, and we also put it on, what's that, Clubhouse, I think was that app. I think that was the name of the app, but I know it was a recorded deal. So it was like myself, my friend who's this consultant, the CEO, and a couple high level execs for Coors, a few other founders of like Hobby Lobby. And so there were some big kind of, just big founders that were in there. So I'll have to see where it was stored.
Okay, send that to me and I'll post it out.
I'll find it.
What can companies like mine, small businesses in the blue collar trade industry space, or a gas compression company, when you think about a job fair or something like that, when a parent or maybe it's a young man comes to a job fair and he's going down the line and he's looking at this and at this and at this, what do we need to do and communicate in our skilled labor aspect to the younger generation? Things like, in the building trade, it's pretty easy to say, when you have a building that you either drew or worked on or helped build, it's, you get to go by and see that. For your grandkids will see that building. So how do we, in the skilled labor that's not, as what you said, is a sexy job, how do we communicate, and how do we communicate that to the younger generation?
It's a really good question, man. And honestly, I think that's the question, right? Is how do you communicate? How do you make that sexy? And I think it starts way before trying to connect with them at the schools. I think it starts way before trying to connect with them at, a job fair. We started out talking about how you and I are connected through this kind of rebranding of what education even is, right? We're not going, hey, look, here's a different kind of school. We're going, no. This is a completely different freaking thing. We'll say school because you know that term, culturally, but it's not. This is a workplace for young people. This is a revolution of creating something vastly, vastly different, right? So a different process, it's creating different it's not creating different human beings, but it's allowing for human beings to come out differently. I think that same storytelling has to start for the trades. One of the things we don't do a good job of in trades is telling the stories of young people who are wildly successful, of older people who've been wildly successful, of creating awareness around a hero's journey for these people in trades, right? We don't have enough of that from a branding standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, where you can go on, the YouTubes and the IGs, and you're like, you going on these places where the young people are going and the eyeballs are going, and we start creating these little mini shows and these snippets. And that's where we start to create change, because then the young people are going there. They're seeing people that look like them, who are like, man, this is my journey. This is my story. The pride that I get from doing this. Look what I got to build here. This is what it looks like at home. This is how much money I'm making. This is what my day-to-day schedule looks like. Dude, I'm so happy. I love my job. My friends that went to college over here are freaking miserable and they're jobless. They're like, we're just not building out we're not telling these stories, right? The big companies, the good companies that have no problem recruiting, Amazon has told the best. Working for Amazon, the majority of those jobs, most people do not like them. Most of their organization isn't pumped. They just know the story of Amazon. It's got this sexy, I can tell you, Tesla, right?
Mm-hmm.
Higher percentage that I've found have been happy working there than I found at Amazon. But there's still a whole lot of unhappy people. And I think Elon is great. I'm a fan. I'm a fan, especially of what his thoughts are on education. I think he's a really unique, interesting dude. Cool, man. He's obviously built something special. But I'm talking from an organizational standpoint. Everybody freaking knows it. And everybody, oh my God, can I go work at Tesla? I want to go work at Tesla. I want to go work at Tesla. They've done an amazing job telling the story about why you would want to be there. We have done a horrible job on that on the trade side. Horrible job. Mike Rowe is the poster boy for it, and he's done phenomenal, but he's not reaching the young people. He speaks more to the boomer generation and more boomers, right? And maybe some Gen Xers, some older millennials have an idea who he is. I talk about it to the kids here, even the ones that are pumped about trades, they don't know who he is, right? So you don't have that iconic person or brand that you are looking up to going, oh my gosh, I know if I go there, That's going to be freaking awesome. Like, I'm pumped to go there. Everybody knows that. I would love to tell them, like, we don't have that. That's what we need to build. I don't know who that is necessarily.
That was my next question.
You
Who's
know,
going to build
I
it?
don't, I don't know who that would be. But my sense is, you know, the people that really start pushing it, the ones that start telling that story the best, are the ones that are going to see the biggest uptick and, you know, getting good young people. Dude, I had my friend who's a SMUD lineman come in here, and SMUD is a Sacramento Municipal Utilities District, and so he's a lineman for that organization, and they're well known here in the Sacramento area. Obviously not really anywhere else, but everybody loves them from an organizational standpoint here. Everybody loves them. They love that, you know, when California has all these blackouts, SMUD never has it. They love that when stuff goes on, SMUD's out and taking care of business. People know SMUD is a great organization to work for. He came in and spoke to some of our our high school, you know, students here at one of our campuses. And he shared his story of just like, dude, I didn't even graduate high school. Right. And I'm not saying that's what I recommend. I'm just saying I didn't graduate high school. I've always been a smart guy. I just didn't have any room in my head for academia. I wanted to go out and experience stuff, you know, and I found this lineman gig and I love it, man. I've got this cool schedule where I do I go 10 days on, I go 10 days off. You know, I've got this cool flexibility. I've got this truck that I take home. And oh, by the way, without any high school diploma, without any college degree, I make $350,000 a year as a lineman.
Golly.
Here's my house, here's my boat, here's my this, here's my that, right? And the kids were like, what? And I'm like going, yes, dude, that's it. So you got a lot of these parents with their degrees, with jobs they hate, making half as much as what he's making. And I'm like, do we not, like, that's how strong the cognitive dissonance is. We need to tell more stories like that.
That is, man, my head is spinning because that's a whole other project.
Yeah,
But you're right. I mean, that is we need a Mike Rowe for the younger generation. Someone
absolutely
doing a series on dirty jobs and
Yep.
showing the dignity of hard work and dirty work.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yep. That's exactly it, man. You're exactly right.
If anybody out there listening to this wants to take that on, please, I'll help in any way. I just can't. I just can't start it.
Yeah, huh? Yeah, it's a big project, it's a big undertaking. But I mean, even a lot of small projects, if we could just get that and get these organizations telling these stories, you know, God, it would be amazing. I was trying to think. Caterpillar recommended me to, gosh, another organization back east, and the name's eluding me right now. I'll have to look it up and see who they are too. But they had started doing a pretty darn good job, at least locally, telling their story, and I know that had a good impact on them. I'll have to look up and see who it is, but we just need more doing it, man.
You said something I haven't heard yet when I asked you about what do we need to do to, you know, influence those young people coming into jobs. You said it starts way before that. And so this is not at all a parenting podcast, but I do want to just switch gears for a second and say, what do you think? I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So for all of those out there, the main audience of this podcast, I'd say, is probably 40 to 50-year-old men. And with, you know, young kids at home. What does that look like at home as a parent to start having? Is it just have the conversations, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. It is having those conversations. It is pointing out you being the one to point out the example. It's you leading by example. But all of that, you know, if we keep backwards mapping, the problem is the reason we're getting into these conversations in the first place of everybody's got to go to college, even though it's provably not true, right? The reason we're in all of these is because we have been indoctrinated into the religion of here's what success looks like. So as a parent, getting out of your own head, freaking not living in fear anymore is step one. Stop being afraid to go outside what everybody says is the right thing, the normal thing. If that was all true, we'd have a whole lot to show for it right now, and we don't. We don't have a populace that's happy and excited and living, you know, freely and treating others well, and we don't have that. But 94% of our population is sure as hell has gone to school, and a big percentage has gone to college, right? That's not the answer. So start by you leading by example at home, you pursuing things at home, and then you having those open, honest conversations. Just going, look, man, I just expect you to be a good person. I expect you to work hard. I'm going to be the example of that right now.
Mm.
And then let's talk, man. Look, here's all the options that are on the table. And as long as you're pursuing you, figuring out who you are, treating other people the right way, giving back, like everything is going to be fine. You start putting those basics out there. If all the parents would start doing that, you would have a large population, especially of our young men, who would naturally gravitate towards that. And people, well, what about the girls? Sure, girls can do it too. Girls aren't going to gravitate towards it like the guys are. Period. End of story. It's just the way it is,
Mhm.
and that's fine. But we would have a large percentage if we would stop, victimizing it. But I also think there's an element of we need to stop distracting our young men too. There's a lot of distractions out there. Yes, social media is a big distraction. Video games are a giant freaking distraction for our young men. And we want to put a BS spin. Well, they're learning and they're creating community and they're all cool, man. Is that the most efficient way to do those things? Because I can give you a million other ways to do that are going to be vastly more beneficial and more efficient than this. It's a freaking trap, and it's trapping our young men, tricking their brains into thinking they're actually accomplishing some things, building some things when they're not. Right. So get that crap out of there too. Like that. I mean, if we're talking the most efficient way to do that, we got to eliminate those kind of things and stay focused on what's real.
Any specific things? So like I know our family, we use the Big Life Journal.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, those guys. So I mean, even as 4 and 6 year olds, we sit down with our boys and we talk about, well, how did it go this year? And it's not as it would be if you were, 18 or 20 years old, but we're still starting that process. So Big Life Journal, if you'll Google that, there's a ton. I mean, they just have a ton of growth mindset.
She's rad, man. The founder of that is rad, and she's a big fan of what we do at Acton.
Yes. So anything else like that you can think of that you would point parents to?
I mean, those are great. Those are great resources. I like the Big Life kind of deal. I like, anything having to do with the family rules. Is another guy. I wish I remember what the name of his book, but he talks about, family meetings, and kind of puts some stuff out there. I'm a big, proponent of that, and implementing that into the household. But again, going back to kind of what I said earlier, all education is self-education. You as a parent leading by example and holding boundaries in the house, and you being disciplined, and then raising somebody who is disciplined, not disciplining your people. Always, how do you discipline your children? I don't discipline my children. I've taught them to be very disciplined. That's very different. All right. So I don't have to ask. They understand that they make a choice and there's a consequence for that choice. It's either good or bad. Right. So if they want privileges, awesome. Do what you need to do to make sure that your privileges are earned. If you make a decision that goes outside of who we are as a family, what we have decided, this is how we act, this is how we behave, this is how we move forward, it goes outside of that, cool. Well, there's a consequence for that too. And you chose that. And so I'm going to honor that choice. Right. And we do it very calmly and, calm, cool, and collected. And so when you teach your young people to be disciplined like that too, all the other stuff ends up being kind of just, it's added, and sometimes it's an added bonus, but it's not always needed.
Okay, well, let's kind of finish up. I want to talk about the Apogee Strong program.
Yeah.
And is that a only in-person program? Can people do it online?
Good question. So the Apogee Strong program is only online right now.
Okay.
So it is right now. It is a virtual program. So the young men jump in and it's a 12-month program right now. And so they come in and every month they're able to unlock through their portal a new project, a new challenge, a new book to read, and a new set of workouts. Right. And so they're personally responsible for they're going to get out whatever they put in. Right. So they're personally responsible for diving into those. And what we would do is we meet together as an entire unit every single week. We'll get on a Zoom call. I'll be on there. We'll have guest mentors from, Navy SEALs to actors to professional athletes we get the best of the best on there, pouring into them for an hour. They get to talk directly to these guys, ask them whatever questions they've got going on as far as the projects they're taking on, the challenges, life in general, being a young man. Like they just get to ask some of the best men on the planet how to be a good man. And then we'll talk about the readings and the workouts and the challenges and anything else that they're going through. Like we just have that time together. And they also have a smaller unit that they're connected to based on when they signed up and where they are in the world, that is being led by, it's another piece that we're adding in right now. It's being led by a graduate. Now we're going to have graduates, that have come through the program. So these guys are going to help lead and mentor other young guys, right? So right now it's all virtual, but we are going to have our first in-person event for all our participants. Our first in-person event is going to be in April. And then the next iteration of that, we want to get some boots on the ground, good men, in parts of the country that want to pour into these young men too. So
What, who is a good fit for the Apogee program? Is it what age range? Is it, I mean, tell me who needs this program?
Yeah.
Every young man.
It's a good question. I mean, really every young, it's one of those things where it's for anybody, but not for everybody, right? Because the reality is we're going to challenge you. We're going to put some things in front of you, and we're not going to baby you though. We're not going to hold your hand. We're going to talk about personal responsibility, and we're going to expect that you're there to better yourself. Right. So if you've got the young man that, I'll say this to the parents, if you're not willing to parent and hold boundaries, and so now you have a young man who's going off the rails because you're not parenting, you're not holding boundaries, you're not holding expectations, we're not going to fix that. We're a great influence. He'll get to hear great messages. He'll have people rooting him on and pouring into him. But then what happens when the computer turns off and he's on to the rest of his stuff for the week? If he's not going to take on those projects, those challenges, it's like joining the best gym in the world. If you don't actually go to work out, you don't get in shape just because you joined the gym.
Right.
You got to go put in the work. So
Right.
the young man's got to be willing to go put in. All the challenges, projects are super freaking fun. These guys are loving it. The ones that are doing it, they told us that's the most valuable part. Not even talking to, billionaire CEOs are like, that's really cool. But when I do the project and challenge, like, look what happened here, and so that's it. It's a young man that wants to be better, and parents that, are going to support him in wanting to be better.
What are the ages? What's the age range?
We've got as young as 12. That's pretty young. You need to be a pretty mature 12, really to understand some of the stuff we're talking about. You just got to be a mature, kind of go getter. The sweet spot, for us has been kind of 15, 16. And again, we've got a couple guys in there, 21, 22. And that's cool too. That all works, but you got to be ready to go get it. One of the things that we've seen that's been one of our biggest struggles is because of when we do the time of the call currently, there's school for some guys. And so we're going to probably switch that and make some nighttime calls because, I can't deal with another parent who's like, oh my gosh, man, I wish you was there talking to Jocko. I wish you had been there talking to, Jeff Hoffman or Brian Callen. But he had to take a math test. And I'm like, dude, I promise you that hour not being there for a friggin' math test, that hour would have, been something that changed his life. So, but that's partly on us as far as just the time of it. So we're going to play with that too. But
I was just thinking about, I've got a nephew who's 16, just turned 17, and he's in a public school. And so would that'd be an issue for him some of the time, the calls? And
it may, yeah, as far as just the time of the actual calls. Again, he's got all the projects, challenges, all that stuff. But I think that's one of our biggest switches. We wanted to give it 12 months, which is we're coming to the tail end of 12 months right now. So I think one of our big switches into 2022 is we'll make those mentor calls, evening calls. I think that's what we've got to do just to make sure all these guys can get there.
Okay. So if people want to find
them, they still get to see them. We record them and send them to all our participants. So even if they don't get to make a call, they always see it, but I want them to be on it and
ask questions.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So people want to find more about that just Google.
Yeah, just apogeestrong.com is the best place to go, or we're on IG at Apogee Program. And we just launched a 501c3 around that too. So if, people that, cause we have people reaching out going, hey man, I don't have any young men, but I'd love to help. I'd love to donate. I'd love to, we just never had a place for them to do so. And they can now, and tax deductible too. So.
That's awesome, Matt. Do you anything else on the skilled trades? 2022. How do you feel about 2022? Everyone I've talked to, like in the energy industry, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's about to take the wheels off. Let's go. Everything's going great. The construction industry. How you feel about next year?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of industries that are taking off. I think we'll always have the jobs available. I mean that's the thing. Even when the industries haven't been taking off and ramping up, we've got so many open jobs right now. So I'm very bullish on the job opportunities. what I want to see though is what we've been talking about and the storytelling around that and changing the narrative so that young people are excited about it. I think the job opportunities are going to stay. They'll be here for years. We just got to get our young men to understand that it's a freaking rad way to go.
Well, I think you've given us a lot of great info, Matt. I really, really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of yours and everything you're doing. You guys out there, go check out the Essential 11 podcast, the Apogee Strong on Instagram, and follow Matt. He's doing great work, and really thankful for you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Pleasure is mine.